Good afternoon on today's Angry Alien Bulletin. Somewhere beneath the waves of the South Pacific, there lies a mystery. A mystery that stirred up all sorts of controversy and, frankly, a lot of bad feelings in the scientific community and in the mainstream media. A recent expedition to the region created more questions than it answered, and so a new expedition has now been funded to find out what exactly hit our planet back in 2014. All of this and more coming at you on the Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to the Angry Astronaut and another Angry Alien Bulletin. So, as many of you probably know, I tend to rail against the scientific community on a regular basis on this channel. I find them increasingly frustrating as time goes on, and, well, really for quite some time, and I still don't really understand why they take the position that they do, especially when it comes to alien civilizations, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, etc. If you make a claim that possibly something that's been observed, whether it be an astronomical phenomena or a piece of debris found on Earth, anything like that, if you suggest that perhaps it could be the product of an extraterrestrial civilization, it's akin to claiming that monkeys are flying out of your butt. I mean, seriously, I don't think I'm exaggerating here. You may as well make that claim if you're going to claim that some sort of meteorite or some sort of astronomical phenomena is the product of an extraterrestrial civilization. Make a claim like that, and yeah, you may as well claim that there are monkeys flying out of your butt being closely pursued by the abominable snow monster of the North. And I continue to really get confused as to why the scientific community that's supposed to be so open-minded, that's so supposed to encourage new ways of thinking, why are they so close-minded on this exact subject? And nowhere is this more apparent than with the work of Dr. Avi Loeb. Now, many of Dr. Loeb's critics don't seem to understand just how successful and respected of an astrophysicist this man was before he started talking about aliens. He put out dozens and dozens of papers about the universe, especially in regards to things like black holes, galaxies, distant astronomical objects and phenomena, and he was very respected and actually achieved some very lofty positions, some very prominent jobs, including, of course, the head of the astronomy department at Harvard University. And now he has fallen, at least in the eyes of his colleagues, to the lowest level imaginable. He may as well be working for the 15th century Inquisition as far as these people are concerned. It is bizarre to see how intensely this man is hated, and not only by the scientific community, but also by journalists who report on scientific matters. They leap on any report that suggests that Dr. Loeb may have been wrong about one of his claims and say, finally, this man's been debunked. We know what he's like now. We know how false his claims are, etc., etc. They're just gleeful, eager to say these sorts of things, only to find out later on that any of these reports may have been premature. That the same people who say that Avi Loeb shouldn't be jumping the gun on some of their claims are more than happy to jump the gun on any scientific claims that his theories are incorrect. I find it very difficult to understand, and not only that, it also really undermines the position of the scientific community and the journalistic community also, in my mind and in my opinion, and also I think in the opinion of lots of other people, which is something we really can't have. And yet that is exactly what we have in today's society, a society that no longer trusts the media or science. And if you no longer trust what should be respected and responsible institutions like that, then who do you turn to? It's a dangerous world that we live in right now. And as much as I would like to tell you what we should do about it, I really don't have any potential solutions. All I can do is continue to bring you the stories as I see them, and the latest one is very exciting indeed, because in spite of the fact that no one in the scientific community seems to respect Dr. Loeb anymore, he seems to be able to still get lots of funding. And he is going to be embarking on yet another expedition into the South Pacific to look for the remnants of an interstellar object that collided with our planet back in 2014. Except this time, he's coming equipped with some much better stuff. But why should this be interesting to UFO/UAP enthusiasts? I mean, it's an interstellar meteor, right? It's just a natural object. So why should we be interested in what these people dredge up at the bottom of the Pacific? Well, because in spite of the fact that Avi Loeb is very, very hesitant to say that this could be an artificial object. In fact, he did once, and that got him so much heat that he decided to actually retract that statement. But regardless of how careful he needs to be in order to preserve what scrap of credibility he still has with the scientific community, what collided with our planet in 2013 might very well have been artificial. Future Angry here. I apologize. Again, allergies taking a big toll on me right now, but I got the date wrong a couple of times. It's not 2013, it's 2014 when this object collided. But let's go ahead and give you an update on the status of this object as far as other scientists are concerned. Finally, a group has come out in support of Dr. Loeb's claims, and I'm just going to go ahead and quote from a recent paper that was published about this mysterious object. Quote, "This paper investigates the likelihood that the CNEOS, by the way, that's a department run by NASA that calculates the odds of an object, whether it be an asteroid or a comet, of hitting the Earth, and it also tracks the orbits of these objects. In any event, what is the likelihood that this object was caused by an interstellar object? The issue has remained controversial due to the lack of information on the capabilities of the classified satellite sensors that recorded the fireball. We critically evaluate previous studies, specifically addressing the reliability of the CNEOS database and the associated measurement uncertainties. With proper statistical analysis of existing data and the addition of a relevant new event, the 2024 Iberian event, we disprove some claims in previous work, such as A, the existence of a purported correlation between CNEOS velocity errors and the speed of this object. So, in other words, they are debunking the notion that there's some sort of correlation between mistakes made with previous objects and this one. And B, the presence of large velocity errors of 10 to 15 kilometers per second in the CNEOS database. In other words, errors large enough to account for this object actually being from within the solar system instead of interstellar just have never happened before. Errors on velocity, that is. And then C, the assertion that CNEOS 14 is most likely a solar system object with a hyperbolic trajectory due to measurement errors. We present a quantitative estimate of the probability that CNEOS 14 is interstellar. If its measurement errors are drawn from the same underlying distribution as the 18 calibrated events, in other words, 18 other events that they are comparing it to, then the probability that CNEOS 14 is interstellar is 94.3%. This probability is lower than the 99.7% generally required to claim a scientific discovery. However, it is sufficiently high enough to be considered significant, and by far the most likely explanation for the currently available empirical evidence. What's important about this paper? Well, finally, there's a group of scientists outside of the Galileo Project who don't have a direct relationship with Dr. Loeb who are confirming that whatever this object was, it did originate from outside the solar system, or at least most probably that's where it comes from. And another reason this is significant is up to this point, the vast majority of the scientific community were clinging to the idea that the 2014 object actually came from within the solar system because of the claims made in this paper, where, quote, higher speed events tend to be overestimated in speed. Appealing to Occam's razor, we suggest that a significant error in the velocity vector is the most probable explanation for the apparent interstellar nature of USG 2014-0108, i.e. it did not have an unbound orbit prior to Earth impact. This is what most scientists were clinging to, even though we're expected to believe that NASA was off by nearly 50% in their velocity estimates on this object, which they have never been that wrong before, not even close. And by the way, Dr. Loeb made another comment, which I thought was rather amusing. If you're not careful with Occam's razor, it can hurt you. But why are so many scientists so determined to prove that this object was not interstellar in origin anyway? I mean, just because it's an interstellar meteor doesn't mean that it's the product of some sort of extraterrestrial civilization. I mean, that's quite a leap to make, so why would they be so determined to disprove its interstellar origin? Well, it's because this object performed in a way that it just shouldn't have given its velocity. The light curve of the fireball, according to Dr. Loeb, showed 3 successive detonations separated by 1/10 of a second from each other, with the last flare being the brightest at a ram pressure of 200 megapascals. This stress is 4 times higher than the maximum ram pressure up to the point to which the toughest iron meteors from the solar system survive. So whatever this object was, it was 4 times more resilient than any nickel-iron meteor that we have ever encountered in the past. Indeed, IM-1 displayed the highest material strength amongst all meteors in the CNEOS Fireball catalog by far. Getting back to the velocity of this object, it wasn't moving at a substantial percentage of the speed of light or anything like that, but it was moving at a speed of 60 kilometers per second relative to the local standard of rest of the Milky Way galaxy, making it 95% faster than any stars in the vicinity of the Sun. To obtain a speed of this magnitude, a rock must get twice as close to the Sun as Mercury. Again, very close indeed to an object that has a tremendous gravitational slingshot effect to achieve this kind of velocity. So extreme speed and extreme material strength, those factors alone were enough to justify the first expedition, which, as many of us know, turned up these odd spherules, the type of objects that one would expect to find in the aftermath of some sort of meteorite impact, except the composition of these spherules was very strange indeed, being comprised of beryllium and lanthanum and uranium, amongst other materials, things totally inconsistent with any meteorites that can be found within the solar system or most materials of any kind within the solar system, again indicating an extrasolar origin, perhaps being flung off of a white dwarf. In another paper written by Avi Loeb and his colleague Morgan McLeod in February of this year, it was also suggested that this type of composition could be created by the tidal disruption of rocky planets on eccentric orbits around M dwarfs. I'll go ahead and provide a link to that particular theory, because what we're really interested in this video is the possible artificial origin, which of course Dr. Loeb is no longer really saying, except for the fact that he is still saying that. Quote, perhaps it's the product of spaghettification of a rocky planet by a dwarf star, or perhaps it is something else. As I told a reporter earlier today, science is done by iterations. Data collection is driven by curiosity. Those who pretend to know the answers in advance are not following the scientific method. What he means by that is obvious. If we pretend to know that it's not aliens before we've actually examined the data, well, we're not following the scientific method. And it is for this reason that we have a new expedition underway, or at least it's been funded at this point and should be setting out sometime next year. Quote, most importantly, the core of IM-1 may have survived the fireball and landed on the ocean floor. The first expedition used a sled with small magnets that could not retrieve a large relic body from IM-1. The use of a remotely operated vehicle with a large retrieval apparatus and a video feed would help us find and collect the biggest piece left over from IM-1's wreckage. This finding would nail the nature of the parent object. Second, finding large pieces would allow us to measure the unusual material strength of IM-1. The spherules that were recovered in the first expedition were composed of molten material that lost its original material properties after being exposed to the immense heat from the friction of IM-1 on Earth's lower atmosphere. In addition to enabling a measurement of IM-1's material strength, finding bigger pieces would allow us to gauge other material properties of IM-1, such as the heat conduction coefficient and the electric conductivity. When combined, these measurements could be used to test a possible origin from a magma ocean of a tidally disrupted planet against the alternative of a Voyager-like meteor, or possibly an artificial object. But like I say, Avi Loeb really isn't saying things like that anymore just because of the vehement reaction that it triggers amongst his peers. The recovered spherules lost volatile elements as their material melted when it was heated to a high temperature by the fireball. However, bigger pieces could have retained the volatile elements in their cores, which were not exposed directly to the fireball. Studying these cores would allow us to get a full census of the chemical composition of IM-1, including the decay products of radioactive isotopes. In particular, the detection of lead isotopes as the decay products of uranium and thorium could be used to derive an age for IM-1's material and differentiate it further from the solar system materials for which the age is well measured at 4.57 billion years. Altogether, recovery of large IM-1 pieces would constitute the first time that scientists put their hands on unprocessed materials from a large object much bigger than the micron-sized interstellar dust particles that came from outside the solar system. The discovery can educate astronomers of what happens around other stars. It would take our spacecraft more than 50,000 years to reach environments surrounding the nearest stars. We can save on wait time by studying objects like IM-1, which have already made the reverse trip from these environments to Earth. Now, all of these things have fantastic scientific implications, and I'm sure that Dr. Loeb is legitimately excited about these possibilities. But what excites us even more, I think, is the possibility that this may be the leftover fragments of an interstellar probe from another civilization that happened to encounter our planet back in 2014. Not too long ago, Dr. Loeb, together with Dr. Kirkpatrick over at Arrow, formerly of Arrow anyway, put together a paper where they theorized that an object like the object that struck our planet in 2014 might have actually been dispatched by a larger mothership like Oumuamua. And interestingly enough, an object very much like IM-1 struck our planet in 2017 off the coast of Portugal at about the same time as Oumuamua was making its way through the solar system. No matter what Dr. Loeb may say about a natural origin for this object, and by the way, all of the possible origins are very fascinating. I think in the back of his mind, he and his colleagues at the Galileo Project are hoping that what they find at the bottom of the Pacific when this expedition gets going is something that looks like this. I'd like to thank our latest Patreon member, Kevin Heath, for joining just yesterday. Thank you so much for becoming part of our family and helping us get towards that 1% threshold that will make such a huge difference in what I can do with this channel in the future. As a result, I will be releasing another Patreon exclusive video this week, and it may be an alien topic this time. We'll see what the membership wants to see. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and as always, stay angry about space.